Thanks, Coach. Coaches. Oh, well, first of all, this is a good showing today, right? Okay, nobody liked nutrition last week, right? Hi, Leah. So, this is a tough one, because today I want to talk about mental toughness, or mental conditioning. And I tell you, my first passion, or my first love, was actually psychology. And that was some 40 years ago when I was determining whether to do law or psychology. And I don't know, back then psychology was about having a patient sit down at that lounge chair, and you'd go, okay, tell me about all your problems. And they go, well, ever since I was a kid, and that would go on. And I thought, oh my God, I would hang myself or fall asleep, one of the two. Either one that would probably send the person in a tailspin. Then I thought about law. I thought, oh, I could be an attorney, that would be cool, But then it's very aggressive. There's always somebody winning and always somebody losing. Well, I'm not sure if I want to do that. And somebody said, hey, why don't you be a chiropractor? And I go, what the hell is that? And next thing I knew, I became a chiropractor. And the beauty of that was I could do what I want in healthcare. I have found over 33 years in practice, working with athletes from peewees to pros, that there's one element and one ingredient that's so important to healing, and that is inspiring the patient, elevating their mood in a sense that they feel that there's hope. How many of you have been injured? Just a few, right? You're not really an athlete unless you get injured, I think. But the truth is, you've had various injuries. They've challenged your esteem. They've challenged your mood. That moment you go through those stages of denial and anger and then acceptance and all that, right? Have you been through that, any of you? Well, I don't know how I had a passion for sports, but I don't know how I got caught up in working with pro athletes like I did. And I found the same ingredient was necessary. The difference was when you're talking to a little kid, it's kind of easy for me to inspire a little kid, but when you're talking to a pro, it's on TV every day, who has fan base that's bigger than some of our rock stars, who makes millions of dollars. What is the chiropractor going to do to help elevate this guy's mood? You'd be surprised. So I came out with a book called Secrets of the Game in 2008, and it really allowed me to put onto paper, what it actually means to inspire an athlete through injury. So I got brought on by the Florida Marlins. I got a phone call. I was working with the Dolphins already. The Marlins head athletic trainer calls me up and says, hey, we got a guy. They don't tell me who it is. I didn't care. I didn't follow professional sports. I just had a passion for the body, the human body under athletic stress and how to heal that. So he calls up and he says, I need you to come down to Marlins Stadium and check out this guy. This guy. I wasn't going to ask who it was because I wouldn't know if I found out. So I go down there, I evaluate the patient, I tell the athletic trainer, this is what you got, sacroiliac joint sprain. By the way, my name, and I turned to the patient, I said, I just examined you, I don't even know what's your name. And he tells me his name, and you wouldn't know who it is. Gary Sheffield. It was like, at the time, it was like the $1 million man in baseball. And I realized that this guy was looking at me to help, to give him hope. And at that moment, there's a phenomenon that occurs that you may have experienced, and you may have experienced, and you may have experienced, and you may have experienced as professionals. And that's called imposter's syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a state of mind where you're educating somebody who's getting paid millions, or who's a rock star athlete, or a superstar, or an adult, or somebody who's listening to you and your wisdom. And you have this moment where you're telling them, you're giving them recommendations, and you go, oh my God, they're really listening to me. This is really weird. This is like kind of cool. All right, okay, I'm going with it. And then I realized at that moment, people, they want hope. They want to have some sense of possibility. And you give them that. 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 So what can you do for each other? So the whole concept is really the power of the mind. So back when I got that phone call and I went down to Marlins Stadium, all of a sudden I was asked to see another guy and another guy. And before I knew it, I was caught up in this thing called a World Series. And I'm heading into and there's like hordes of people, and I'm just like my little nerdy self going in, taking care of these guys, and then, and there's all this commotion came on. And then the Marlins won their first World Series. And the weirdest thing happened, I look at all these pro athletes and I go, man, they're all like great. They're unbelievable. And then I lived that dream and moved on and worked with the Miami Dolphins. And we went one season, 1 win, 16 losses. And I learned so much from losing. You learn more from losing than you do from winning. And you find out what your integrity is like when you lose. And you win and you learn from that. So here's what I saw. They had multiple psychologists coming in, one of which lectures down at Florida International University. I became friends with him, Dr. Toomer, and I'm standing there watching guys get injured and not playing hard, and then there's the other guys, the guys that just every day they started the game with the same energy and the same rigor and intensity every game, no matter what. And I turned to the psychologist. We're watching guys crumble, guys that were tough. And I said, what's going on here? Guys that were tough, considered tough, are falling apart. He goes, there's two things. There's mental toughness and there's mental resilience. Which one's better? Tell me. Exactly. Do you know why? Exactly. You bounce back. So mental toughness, the guys who had mental toughness, they were badass. They would start every game when we were winning, which was rare, but when we were winning, and he used this great metaphor. It's like a 2x4. Mental toughness, you hit it, you hit it, you hit it until the point where it starts to break up and splinter off and snap. So that's how you find out or read about, wow, that guy was really cool until he went postal, or he just snapped. What happened? He snapped. His mental toughness broke down. Mental resilience is like a palm tree blowing in the wind, especially here in South Florida with the hurricanes, right? The palm tree. You want to be a palm tree. You want to blow as far as you can and then bounce back. That's the difference. Are you resilient? Are you resilient? Are you going to fall asleep? Are you resilient? I pick on the people who are starting to give me the head nod, So understanding mental toughness versus resilience, then you want to pick your mentors. Does anybody have a mentor that they look up to in the area of sports? Anybody? Coach? Who?
My old coach, Coach Gray.
Yeah.
I got a couple other friends that coach around the country that I talk to.
Good. Anybody else? Anybody got a mentor? Doc? Me? Oh, shucks. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Even I get down. But that's the beauty of it. Everybody has a little system that they help boost themselves up. One of the things that we would say at Miami Dolphins, and well, because we always lost, but it was athletes have short memories. You have to have a short memory. Forget about that, because you know what? The next game is coming, and it's coming fast. So you focused on the next event. That's all you can do. Has anybody lost anything? An event? Anybody? Yeah? Everybody lost an event? Oh yeah. So there's something called pattern interrupt. It's a technique that the coaches can use, or you can use with each other. I'll give you an example. I was a competitive bodybuilder after high school and wrestling and all that good stuff. And I did really well as a lightweight, obviously, because I'm only 5'5". And I took a sabbatical, went to school, then again trained hard and went into this competition. It was the Mr. Florida bodybuilding competition. And I thought, wow, I'm a little older, I'm a little heavier, maybe that's all muscle, good. So I cut down and I thought, oh, all right, I'm looking good, but I'm not gonna make the lightweight class. I'm gonna go into the middleweight class. So I competed in this middleweight class, and there we all lined up, and I realized I was 10 pounds lighter than the heaviest guys in that class. That's significant. Because there was a guy this tall. They called him the mutant. When he would pose, he looked like a god. Squashed, but a god. The guy next to me, 10 pounds heavier, he would do this thing called a lat spread. I thought it was a Boeing 747. This guy was wide. Needless to say, after a streak of, first, second, or third places in other competitions, this one I didn't even make the grade. I think I was 18th. That's what I got for trying to compete. And I had all my friends in the audience. My mom was in the audience. And it was one of those things where I trained hard, you dieted hard, you did everything that was necessary. I thought I looked pretty good. And this is what happened. I come off the stage, I got my stuff, I'm walking down the aisle, I see my mom. My mom comes up and she goes, I go, wait, sorry, Mom. I really, and I was just about to say like bad stuff, and she goes, son, I am so glad that you didn't get any, what did she say, blown off the stage or something cool that my mom would say. I go, what? She goes, I'm glad you didn't even place this time. I go, what are you talking about? She goes, your head was getting all swollen and everything, and you were thinking you're all cocky. You deserve this. I go, holy nut. My mom was a genius. I go, really, Mom? She goes, yeah. Completely changed the direction. Pattern interrupt. If you're not sure what that is, it's powerful. Because when somebody loses and you go, I'm sorry you did, next time. No. Think of something creative to say to them, to bring them up, to change their way of thinking. My friend, after all that happened, he calls me up and he goes, I go, he tells me, I heard what happened, and he goes, don't feel bad. My girlfriend of many years, she's so mad at me right now and all that. And I didn't want to go to work feeling that way. And he goes, but she was pissed. And she was in the shower, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? He walks in the shower, fully clothed, and he goes, I love you, I'm sorry. That is a pattern interrupt. That was huge. It changes the course of everything that you can imagine. So be creative when something uncomfortable happens to someone next to you or someone close to you. Pattern interrupt. So that's one technique. Wait, what was the other thing I was going to tell you? Oh, okay. What competition is coming up?
We have a meet this weekend at FL Runners and over at
Lakeland.
Lakeland, that's right. Thank you. Does anybody want to break a personal record by any chance? Anybody? Raise your hand. Not many people want to break personal records, do they? Who asked you, Abdul? Okay. Does anybody, okay, here's my thought. I was going to say break out a piece of paper and pen, but we don't use those things anymore. So I was going to suggest, how committed are you to breaking a personal record? Now, mind you, everything I'm telling you are tools that you can use for other things, for grades in class, for other achievements. Here it is. A personal record is simply a number. I want you to write it down, put it in your phone. I want you to live it. I want you to breathe it. And I want it to be passive. I want you to think about it. I want you to think about that number. You got it in your head? Oh, you didn't want to break a personal record, did you? I saw you raise your hand. All right. My point is, it's a commitment, and it's not some ethereal thing that you just go, oh, I'd like to break through that number. Here's how we're going to do it. Because you guys, you have absolutely no idea. Maybe some of you, because I don't know your personal stories, but you have no idea what you're capable of doing. If you fall asleep, I'm going to hang you. I saw you close your eyes for a second. Because this is hugely important. There are things that you can do that you never thought you could, I promise. There are things that are unimaginable. And I'm going to tell you something that just the thought of it gives me goosebumps. I was an adrenaline junkie. It was important. I didn't do drugs. I should have, but I could have, but I didn't. But I found bungee cord jumping. I found skydiving. I found rappelling off a 7-story building with the SWAT team. That was a rush. I found lecturing on stage would almost be worse than burning in a fire, but I did it. And aside from some other wild things, like, believe it or not, I'm afraid of deep, dark water, so swimming with the dolphins was really scary, but it was up there. And all of you would go, oh, that's so cute. Why would you be afraid of that? No, it's the dark water that freaks me out. But there was one thing. Oh, I also did stand-up comedy. So try to make somebody laugh who's not that funny, to try to make them laugh on stage, that's scary. It took 6 weeks of classes, and that's another story. Scary. So it was not until there was a communication course called the Power Walk Weekend. And it was featuring a guy you may have heard of, Tony Robbins. Now, this was years ago, and one of the key features of his program was to walk across fire. I said, I want to do that. But what I realized is the first night, the first day of the training was 6 hours of preparation. And what it took are tools that you could use. Before I tell you one of the most important ingredients, let me ask you this. Does anybody remember the worst day in their life? Right? Aside from stabbing yourself. Does anybody remember or can think of a time it was absolutely just, I mean, like if I asked you, give me a time that was horrible, and you would be able to spit it out right away, right? A time that you were miserable and I mean, it was like you didn't know how you were going to get out from underneath this rock. For the same token, how many can tell me the best time that they've ever had, one of the best times they've ever had in their entire life? Thanks. This is sad. This is very, very sad. All right, I'm happy. But you all, here's what's important. I'm going to teach you right now what you can do in an abbreviated form that took me 6 hours of training to walk across fire. Now, you must think of a time where you felt so empowered and so highly motivated. It was one of those moments in your life that you felt invincible. If you can think of that time, if you can capture that moment, think about it. I love that you're thinking, as I see your eyes move up and to the left, and you're trying to think of that moment. If you can think of that moment, I want you to capture, I want you to turn up the intensity. I want you to think about it deeply. you're going to sit, you'll automatically want to sit up in your chair, breathe deep, and start thinking of that moment that you felt so empowered. Maybe it was your first kiss. Maybe it was an A on a test that was so hard and nobody else got an A. Maybe it was winning a certain race. Maybe it was seeing something happen with your mom or your dad that was so cool. You felt it up in here. But you must think of that one time. Turn up the intensity. Colorize it. Just imagine, how are you looking? Are you looking at it through your eyes, or are you looking at it, or is there a hidden camera? Was there a smell that was associated with it? Was there something auditory? Did you hear? Was there music? Or was it somebody just whispering in your ear? Or was it the sound of the gun for a race? Think of all those things. And now you've captured this moment that was so important to you that you felt like a god or a goddess at that moment. Now, next. Pavlov's dogs, ring the bell, salivate. Are we familiar with conditioned response? This is going to take practice. Think of that moment, and you anchor it into something that gets you excited. A movement, an action, a fist pump, boom, whatever it is, or a yes with something verbal. And you do it over and over. I don't care if you practice in the bathroom, in front of the mirror, on the toilet. I don't care what you do. Do it. Because that is now going to anchor that moment into an action. So you've got the thought, the image, it's highlighted, it's bright, you're in the midst of it. Deep breath in from the chest, and you do that action. For me, it's yes. Then, what we did was, there was a 15-foot lane, 15-foot lane of hot coals that had been smoldering for hours. It was about 3 feet wide, and this thing, the urns were burning, and it was at night now, because we had been training for 6 hours on how a tribe in somewhere, God knows where, does this as a ritual consistently, and people walk across fire. So, the master himself, who taught us all this, now there was 1,200 people in the audience. I wanted to be the first one. I knew I could walk across, but I wanted to be the first. So I run out of the auditorium, and I get ready, and I'm there, and this guy is like 7'6", and he puts his hand on my shoulders. He goes, "Are you ready?" And now we are taught, focus above the horizon, and you repeat something, cool moss, because you want to repeat something as well that will get you across and preoccupy your mind. So I anchored, and it's called anchoring. So I go, yes! Deep breath, focus 5 degrees, 15 degrees above the horizon, and you walk across like you own it. And no sneakers, no socks, I'm barefoot. What I had done, and then to the point where they have a hose at the end of the aisle, and they wash your feet off, because sometimes those coals stick to your feet, and when you break that state, you burn. So what I had done was fascinating to me, but what was more fascinating is after I got done with it, it was such an energy expenditure. I relaxed, and I watched old ladies do it. I watched young kids do it. I watched cripples walk across. I watched people that you and I would go, the hell? How did that happen? Because the power of the mind. And then there were those that didn't do it. They didn't want to do it. They were afraid. My point in this whole thing is, I never ever thought it could be done, but you can change your physiology. You can change the way, you can change things if given the impetus, if given the reason, if given the want to. And that's how I want to end, is given the want to. Do you want to bad enough, break that PR this weekend for those of you. Or the next time you get the opportunity. How bad do you want it? And there's something called leveraging. Leveraging. What is important to you? Why do you even run? Why? Why do we even bother with this? It's hard. It's hard work. You gotta listen to them bitch at you. You don't do that, do you? It's hard work to be an athlete and a student, but yet you're here. You're the few that have chosen to do this. You got what, 2 jobs? Sorry, did I embarrass you? But I mean, the point being is, there's something in your core that you can use to leverage to achieve things. What is that? What is your want to? Is it because you're on a scholarship and you want to be able to attend school? Is it because you want someone to be proud of you and your family? Or because you want to show that you can do it without somebody? Whatever it might be, amplify it, make it bigger. And then when you got that drive and that want to, you can change your physiology. Because there's a saying on the wall at Miami Dolphins that says anybody can play when they feel 100%. And that was all it said. Do you know what that means? Can you play when you're 98%? Can you play when you're 50% healthy? Can you compete? Can you break a personal record when hell is breaking loose around you? Sometimes that drives people. So I challenge each and every one of you to find your mental resilience, to highlight one of the greatest times in your entire life up until now. Make it bigger and bolder. Anchor it into something cool like yes. And use that. Condition yourself. Look in the mirror. Do it in your car. Let people think you're whacked. You see that guy? He's like cheering himself on in the car. And find your want to. You know what your want to is. So don't say I don't know, because every single one of you have a want to. But turn it up. Turn up the intensity. Make it bigger and bolder. Any questions? Any questions about how to do this? Are you going to do it? Is there one thing? What's one thing that you're going to do? Did you see the photograph I posted of you? I love that. You look so pumped up. It was like, yeah. Love that. Anybody want to contribute? Comments? Good? Everybody's good? You're going to break some PRs today? I mean, this week? Right? Or next week, or whenever you have the opportunity? All right. Thank you very much.